Hello Year 7, welcome to Lesson 11 of Coraline. Usual reminders, you know what to do, and Coraline says, remember to hand in your work. Okay, go to Teams, attach it from the paper clip and click hand in so you get your special animation. Okay, chapter 5, let's go. Quick recap then, last lesson, what did we look at? Fairy tale conventions, the rules, the usual things that we find in fairy tales. We had heroes, looked at all those different heroes in different stories. We looked at their magical items that they have to help them on their missions. And we looked at their helpers. And we looked at Coraline's magical item and her helper. We looked at her stone with a hole in it. And we looked at her talking cat. Okay, so this lesson we are going to be looking at rest of chapter 5. We're going to read through the end of the chapter, and we're going to make sure that you understand what's going on because the plot gets a little bit darker. And then we're going to use what we read this lesson in our final lesson of the week, because we're going to look at one more fairy tale convention in this chapter, and we're going to look at the use of mirrors. Very interesting thing that's used in this chapter. Okay, and as soon as you start thinking about it, you will see what I mean. Okay, so let's move on. Where did we pause then in chapter 5? What's happened so far? Just to recap, Coraline's parents had been missing for a few days. The cat had led her to the mirror where she had seen them, and they wrote "Help us" backwards in the mirror. She phoned the police, but they didn't believe her. Okay, so we'll pick up just where we left off. The black cat, who had sat on the floor, grooming its fur through this entire conversation, now stood up and led the way into the hall. Coraline went back into her bedroom and put on her blue dressing gown and her slippers. She looked under the sink for a torch and found one. But the batteries had long since run down, and it barely glowed with the faintest straw-coloured light. She put it down again and found a box of in case of emergency white wax candles and thrust one into a candlestick. She put an apple into each pocket. She picked up the ring of keys and took the old black key off the ring. She walked into the drawing room and looked at the door. She had the feeling that the door was looking back at her, which she knew was silly and knew on a deeper level was somehow true. She went back into her bedroom and rummaged in the pocket of her jeans. She found the stone with a hole in it and put it into her dressing gown pocket. She lit the candle wick with a match and watched it sputter and light, and then she picked up the black key. It was cold in her hand. She put the key into the keyhole in the door but did not turn it. "When I was a little girl," said Coraline to the cat, "when we lived in our old house a long, long time ago, my dad took me for a walk on the wasteland between our house and the shops. It wasn't the best place to go for a walk, really. There were all these things that people had thrown away back there. Old cookers and broken dishes and dolls with no arms and no legs and empty cans and broken bottles. Mum and Dad made me promise not to go exploring back there because there were too many sharp things and tetanus and such. But I kept telling them I wanted to explore it. So one day my dad put on his big brown boots and his gloves and put my boots on me and my jeans and sweater, and we went for a walk. We must have walked for about 20 minutes. We went down this hill to the bottom of a gully where a stream was, where my dad suddenly said to me, 'Coraline, run away up the hill now.' He said it in a sort of way, urgently, so I did. I ran away up the hill. Something hurt me on the back of my arm as I ran, but I kept on running. As I got to the top of the hill, I heard somebody thundering up the hill behind me. It was my dad, charging like a rhino. When he reached me, he picked me up in his arms and swept me over the edge of the hill. And then we stopped, we puffed and we panted, and we looked back down the gully. The air was alive with yellow wasps. we must have stepped on a wasp's nest in a rotten branch as we walked, and while I was running up the hill, my dad stayed and got stung to give me time to run away. His glasses had fallen off when he ran. I only had the one sting on the back of my arm. He had 39 stings all over him. We counted later in the bath. The black cat began to wash its face and whiskers in a manner that indicated increasing impatience. Coraline reached down and stroked the back of its head and neck. The cat stood up, walked several paces until it was out of her reach, and then it sat down and looked up at her again. "So," said Coraline. Later that afternoon my dad went back again to the wasteland to get his glasses back. He said if he left it another day he wouldn't be able to remember where they'd fallen, and soon he got home wearing his glasses. He said that he wasn't scared when he was standing there and the wasps were stinging him and hurting him and he was watching me run away, because he knew he had to give me enough time to run or the wasps would have come after both of us. Coraline turned the key in the door. It turned with a loud clunk. The door swung open. There was no brick wall on the other side of the door, only darkness. A cold wind blew through the passageway. Coraline made no move to walk through the door. "And he said that wasn't brave of him doing that, just standing there and being stung," said Coraline to the cat. "It wasn't brave because he wasn't scared. It was the only thing he could do. But going back again to get his glasses when he knew that the wasps were there, when he was really scared, that was brave." She took her first step down the dark corridor. She could smell dust and damp and mustiness. The cat padded along beside her. "And why was that?" asked the cat, although it sounded barely interested. "Because," she said, "when you're scared, but you still do it anyway, that's brave." The candle cast huge, strange, flickering shadows along the hallway, along the wall. She heard something moving in the darkness. Beside her, or to one side of her, she could not tell. It seemed as if it was keeping pace with her, whatever it was. "And that's why you're going back to her world then," said the cat, "because your father once saved you from wasps." "Don't be silly," said Coraline. "I'm going back for them because they are my parents. And if they noticed I was gone, I'm sure they would do the same for me. You know you're talking again." "How fortunate I am," said the cat, "in having a travelling companion of such wisdom and intelligence." Its tone remained sarcastic, but its fur was bristling and its brush of a tail stuck up in the air. Coraline was going to say something like "sorry" or "wasn't it a lot shorter to walk last time?" when the candle went out as suddenly as if it had been snuffed by someone's hand. There was a scrabbling and a pattering, and Coraline could feel her heart pounding against her ribs. She put out one hand and felt something wispy, like a spider's web, brush her hands and her face. At the end of the corridor, the electric light went on, blinding after the darkness. A woman stood, silhouetted by the light, a little ahead of Coraline. "Coraline, darling," she called. "Mum," said Coraline, and she ran forward, eager and relieved. "Darling," said the woman, "why did you ever run away from me?" Coraline was too close to stop, and she felt the other mother's cold arms enfold her. She stood there, rigid and trembling, as the other mother held her tightly. "Where are my parents?" Coraline asked. "We're here," said her other mother, in a voice so close to her real mother's that Coraline could scarcely tell them apart. "We're here. We're ready to love you and play with you and feed you and make your life interesting." Coraline pulled back, and the other mother let her go with reluctance. The other father, who had been sitting on a chair in the hallway, stood up and smiled. "Come on into the kitchen," he said. "I'll make us a midnight snack, and you'll want something to drink. Hot chocolate, perhaps." Coraline walked down the hallway until she reached the mirror at the end. There was nothing reflected in it but a young girl in her dressing gown and slippers, who looked like she had recently been crying, but whose eyes were real eyes, not black buttons, and who was holding tightly to a burned-out candle in a candlestick. She looked at the girl in the mirror, and the girl in the mirror looked back at her. "I will be brave," thought Coraline. "No, I am brave." She put down the candlestick on the floor. Then she turned round. The other mother and the other father were looking at her hungrily. "I don't need a snack," she said. "I have an apple. See?" And she took an apple from her dressing gown. Pocket then bit into it with relish and an enthusiasm that she did not really feel. The other father looked disappointed. The other mother smiled, showing a full set of teeth, and each of the teeth was a tiny bit too long. The lights in the hallway made her black button eyes glitter and gleam. "You don't frighten me," said Coraline, although they did frighten her very much. "I want my parents back." The world seemed to shimmer a little at the edges. "What would I have done with your old parents?" "They have left you, Coraline. It must be because they became bored with you or tired. Now, I will never become bored with you, and I will never abandon you. You will always be safe here with me." The other mother's wet-looking black hair drifted around her head like the tentacles of a creature in the deep ocean. "They weren't bored of me," said Coraline. "You're lying. You stole them." "Silly, silly Coraline. They are fine, wherever they are." Coraline simply glared at the other mother. "I'll prove it," said the other mother, and brushed the surface of the mirror with her long white fingers. It clouded over as if a dragon had breathed on it, and then it cleared. In the mirror, it was daytime already. Coraline was looking at the hallway all the way down to her front door. The door opened from the outside, and Coraline's mother and father walked inside. They carried suitcases. "That was a fine holiday," said Coraline's father. "How nice it is not to have Coraline any more," said her mother with a happy smile. "Now we can do all the things we always wanted to do, like go abroad, but we were prevented from doing by having a little daughter." "And," said her father, "I take great comfort in knowing that her other mother will take better care of her than we ever could." The mirror fogged and faded and reflected the night once more. "See?" said her other mother. "No," said Coraline, "I don't see, and I don't believe it either." She hoped that what she had just seen was not real, but she was not as certain as she sounded. There was a tiny doubt inside her, like a maggot in an apple core. Then she looked up and saw the expression on her other mother's face, a flash of real anger which crossed her face like summer lightning, and Coraline was sure in her heart that what she had seen in the mirror was no more than an illusion. Coraline sat down on the sofa and ate her apple. "Please," said her other mother, "don't be difficult." She walked into the drawing room and clapped her hands twice. There was a rustling noise and a black rat appeared. It stared up at her. "Bring me the key," she said. The rat chittered. Then it ran through the open door that led back to Coraline's own flat. The rat returned, dragging the key behind it. "Why don't you have your own key on this side?" asked Coraline. "There is only one key." "Only one door," said the other father. "Hush," said the other mother. "You must not bother our darling Coraline's head with such trivialities." She put the key in the keyhole and twisted. The lock was stiff, but it clunked closed. She dropped the key into her apron pocket. Outside, the sky had begun to lighten to a luminous grey. "If we aren't going to have a midnight snack," said the other mother, "we still need our beauty sleep. I am going back to bed, Coraline. I would strongly suggest that you do the same." She placed her long white fingers on the shoulders of the other father, and she walked him out of the room. Coraline walked over to the door at the far corner of the drawing room. She tugged on it, but it was tightly locked. The door of her other parents' bedroom was now closed. She was indeed tired, but she did not want to sleep in the bedroom. She did not want to sleep under the same roof as her other mother. The front door was not locked. Coraline walked out into the dawn and down the stone steps. She sat down on the bottom step. It was cold. Something furry pushed itself against her side in one smooth, insinuating motion. Coraline jumped, then breathed a sigh of relief when she saw what it was. "Oh, it's you," she said to the black cat. "See," said the cat. "Wasn't so hard recognising me, was it? Even without names? Well, what if I wanted to call you?" The cat wrinkled its nose and managed to look unimpressed. "Calling cats," it confided, "tends to be a rather overrated activity. Might as well call a whirlwind." "What if it was dinner time?" asked Coraline. "Wouldn't you want to be called then?" "Oh, of course," said the cat, "but a simple cry of dinner would do nicely. See? No need for names." "Why does she want me?" Coraline asked the cat. "Why does she want me to stay here with her?" "She wants something to love, I think," said the cat. "Something that isn't her. She might want something to eat as well. It's hard to tell with creatures like that." "Do you have any advice?" asked Coraline. The cat looked as if it were about to say something else sarcastic. Then it flicked its whiskers and said, "Challenge her. There's no guarantee she'll play fair, but her kind of thing loves games and challenges." "What kind of thing is that?" asked Coraline. But the cat made no answer, simply stretched luxuriantly and walked away. Then it stopped and turned and said, "I'd go inside if I were you. Get some sleep. You have a long day ahead of you." And then the cat was gone. Still, Coraline realised it had a point. She crept back into the silent house, past the closed bedroom door beyond which the other mother and the other father... What? She wondered. Slept? Waited? And then it came to her that, should she open the bedroom door, she would find it empty, or more precisely, that it was an empty room and it would remain empty until the exact moment that she opened the door. Somehow that made it easier. Coraline walked into the green and pink parody of her own bedroom. She closed the door and hauled the toy box in front of it. It would not keep anyone out, but the noise of somebody would make trying to dislodge it would wake her, she hoped. The toys in the toy box were still mostly asleep, and they stirred and muttered as she moved their box, and then they went back to sleep. Coraline checked under her bed, looking for rats, but there was nothing there. She took off her dressing gown and slippers and climbed into bed and fell asleep with barely enough time to reflect, as she did so, on what the cat would have meant by a challenge. Okay, Year 7. So, your work for today then. Title, Chapter 5, Understanding, and today's date. Pause the video while you write that down, please. Nice and neatly and underlined. Thank you. Right, so you're going to get 8 questions that I want you to answer on what we have just read. I want you to write your answers in full sentences. You don't need to write the questions down. Okay, you just need to put your answers into a sentence. So that needs a capital letter and it needs a full stop at the end. Okay, so you need to make sure that that's done, because when your teacher checks your work, that's what they will be looking for. Okay. You can pause the video to make sure that you complete the work properly. There will be 2 slides with the questions on. So you can either wait until the slides show all the questions, or you can pause it question by question. That's entirely up to you, however you want to work. So when question 1 comes up, you can pause it and do that question. Or you can wait until I go through the first slide with the first 5 questions, and then there's 3 questions on the second slide. Okay? But pause the video and make sure you can write your answers down. I want you to try with some of the answers to use some little short quotations, and I have included some little pictures of bits of the book. Okay, so you don't need to remember them. I've put little bits of the book next to the questions. Okay, and I've shown you there the bit where I've put like this. So if you're using a short quotation, you imagine you've got some little hooks, and you've got your little hooks, and you've hooked some words out of the book, and you've put them in your answer. Okay, on the first question, I've given you an example of how you can do that if you're still not sure what I mean. Okay, and then finally, there may be some questions with some little purple stars. Those are ones where you could just challenge yourself. Okay, those are ones where you could, if you wanted, try and just develop your answer in more than one sentence. So I could be looking for a little bit more detail in those ones. Okay, so those are your tips on how I want this work completed. All right, if you need to pause the video just to read that a little bit more, do that now, because I'm just about to move on to the questions. Okay, in 3, 2, 1. Okay, so question number 1. It has 2 purple stars, so you could challenge it. And it has a little bit of the text, so you could also use a quotation in your answer as well. Okay, so the question is, what does Coraline think about the door? Okay, don't forget full sentence with a capital letter and a full stop at the end. Question number 2. Oh, sorry, there is the example. So there's my example with my quotation in. So for example, Coraline thought the door was looking back at her. And you'll see that little bit in the extract from the question. Okay, and if you want to see how you can challenge it, there's some connectives, but also. Okay, so that's how you can use your quotation in your sentence if you weren't sure how to do it. Okay, question number 2 is really coming up now. What does Coraline use when the batteries in her torch run out? There's no need for a quotation, and it's not a challenging question. Victor thinks he knows the answer, obviously. Question number 3. Could be a challenging one. You could develop this answer. What happened when Coraline and her father went exploring when she was younger? Pause the video if you need to. You should, because it's going to be a longer answer. Okay, question number 4 coming up. What does Coraline say is the really brave thing her father did that day? And the last question for this slide, question number 5. So you can include a quotation in this answer. Why does Coraline run towards the other mother? You could use a quotation. I've also just given you a little bit of the book there to help you understand. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the next slide. So you need to pause this video now if you've not managed to answer those questions yet. Okay, question number 6. How does the other mother's appearance become more frightening? And I've included there the page where the other mother becomes more frightening. So you can include some quotations there about the other mother if you can. See if you can find the bits of detail and tell me why the other mother in that particular bit. There's 2 or 3 different bits of her appearance seem to make her seem a little bit more frightening. Remember, full sentences, capital letter and full stop. Okay, question number 7 coming up. Okay, I've typed out the quotation here. What do you think it means? Bonus points if you can tell me what the technique is. There was a tiny doubt inside her, like a maggot in an apple core. Okay, final question coming up. What advice does the cat give Coraline? Okay, pause the video, Year 7, and answer those questions the best you can. Full sentences, capital letter, full stop, best you can. Well done. Okay, Year 7, so we're going to look at some answers for those questions, and I want you to look at what you've written for your answers, and I want you to just try and review them with the ones on the screen. I don't expect your answers to be exactly the same as mine. That would be a little bit spooky, okay? But I want you to see, have you got your answers round about in the same ballpark as mine? You can do a little bit of DIT on yours if you want, so you can tweak your answers, you can improve them, you can change them, you can think, oh, I got that bit, I didn't get that bit, okay? So let's have a look what you could have got for question number 1. Question was, what does Coraline think about the door? Well, that was a really strange bit because she thinks it is looking back at her. So that was a quotation we could use. That was in the example that we had. But she feels that's silly. Why would a door look back at her? A door can't look. It's not got eyes. But then, did you spot the other bit? Part of her also believes this is true. And the door really is looking at her. So she's in real mixed feelings about that. Part of her thinks, don't be silly. Door can't look at you. And then the other side of her thinks, yeah, that door's looking at me. Okay, you may have got something about mixed feelings. Okay, so have a look at your answer, see if you want to tweak any of it, give yourself a tick if you think, yeah, mine says about that as well. Well done. Well done if you got a quotation as well, and well done if you wrote more than one sentence. What does Coraline use when the batteries in a torch run out? She uses a candle. Always have your emergency candles for when there's a power cut. Top tip. And some matches to light them, otherwise they're a bit useless. What else are you going to do with them? I don't know. Okay, question number 3. What happened when Coraline and her father went exploring when she was younger? Dramatic story that she said, wasn't it? She was attacked by a wasp's nest, or they stood on a wasp's nest. Dad picked her up and carried her away. Then he stayed as a decoy. He distracted the wasps so that he could get stung. She had time to run away. Did any of you get how many wasp stings her dad had? 39. How many did she have? 1. Did any of you get that he dropped his glasses? So well done if you got more than one sentence in that. That was a challenge question. Okay. Pause the video and adapt your answer if you need to. What does Coraline say is a really brave thing her father did that day? Okay, so she doesn't say saving her from the wasps is a really brave thing. The really brave thing was going back for his glasses, knowing that the wasps were still there, and so he would be scared. Saving her wasn't brave because he wasn't scared. It was the only thing he could do. So because afterwards he knew the wasps were there, going back, that was really brave because he was scared then, and doing something, knowing that you're really scared of it, is brave. That's what Coraline says. And I agree with her as well. Okay. Why does Coraline run towards the other mother? Oh, she doesn't realise who it is, does she? And I think it's because she's been thinking about her dad. And she's all, my dad was really brave that day. And she's all wrapped up in those memories. Then she sees the shape of her mother. She thinks it's a real mother. So she runs towards her. Oops, wrong one. So because she thinks for a moment it's her real mother. Why? Well, it shows that she really does care for her. We've already seen that she's not the greatest mother. It's not brilliant. They don't really have a lot of fun together, but it shows that she does really care and miss her. She wants a real mum back. She don't want that other one. Who would? Okay, so pause the video if you need to adjust any of your answers, and let's have a look at the final 3. How does the other mother's appearance become more frightening? Her teeth are also too long, like her fingers. Oh, yeah. Who wants too long teeth? Her button eyes seem to glitter and gleam, which makes her seem mysterious. So notice the two little quotations I've got in there with my little hooks. And her hair moves like the tentacles of a creature in the deep ocean, which makes her seem very frightening, like she's going to try and hurt Coraline. Okay, so it's like she's almost got an octopus on her head. And all her hair moving around, like she's going to grab out and get her. Okay, well done if you got those 3 different things about her teeth, her eyes and her hair. Pause the video if you need to change any of your answers. 7. There was a tiny doubt inside her, like a maggot in an apple core. Now I haven't put the technique on my answer, but did you get that it was a simile? Like a maggot in an apple core. Describing it as if it's something else. Okay, so why is a doubt in your head like a maggot in an apple core? Eating away at something. Imagine doubting something and it's in your head and it's eating away at you. So I've put, it's a tricky one this, that the doubt is a horrible thought like a maggot. Maggots aren't very nice, are they? Little wriggly horrible thingies. And it's going to eat away at her mind. She's not going to be able to stop thinking about it. Like a maggot won't stop eating an apple. Tricky one that. So well done if you got something similar like that. Something about something being horrible, or it won't stop, or it'll eat away at it. Okay, pause the video if you need to. And well done if you got that it was a simile as well. Excellent. Right, last one. Nearly there. What advice does the cat give Coraline? To challenge her. She likes games and challenges. Play her at her own game. Clever cat. Okay. So well done if you got some of those right. Well done if you've adjusted some of your answers and you've reviewed your learning and you've improved some of your answers. Well done if you got some quotations, and well done if you wrote more than one sentence and you lived up to the challenge of the challenge questions, Year 7. Okay, so next lesson, mirrors and symbolism. Okay, but don't forget the most important thing is to make sure you're keeping evidence of your work and you are uploading it onto Teams, so that when I have a nice little nose there, I can see all the fabulous work that you're doing. Okay, Year 7, over and out. See you later, alligator.